start sharp this morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session today on Make Your Business a Success with Flexible and Hybrid Working. Just before we begin, we are recording today's session so that it will be available later, and also an opportunity to receive all of the slides. I will share the email address at the end so that you can get a copy of all of the content today. I would really encourage any questions that you have, just pop those in the chat as we go along. That would be super, and hopefully we get an opportunity at the end to go through maybe not all of the questions, but definitely some of the questions. If there are sensitive issues though, and you would rather speak one-to-one, there are contact details at the end as well. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new people that we've not engaged with before. So welcome along this morning to the webinar. And for anybody that doesn't know us, we are BeyondHR, and we support startups, SMEs and larger organisations across the UK for all of their HR needs, from documentation to on-site and Zoom support, as we now know it, and any advice or queries or case management that you as a business owner might need in time. So I am Natalie O'Hare, delivering today's session, Flexible and Hybrid Working. Wow, how far we have come, but just some top tips as well to make that a bit of a success in your business. As I said, post any of the questions in the chat just at the top as we go along, and it would be great to see some nice questions that we have there as well. And this topic, we're still moving, we're still evolving. Organisations are maybe all at different stages with trying to get people back to the workplace, or many have 100% back, or many don't have the capacity anymore for various organisational changes. So BeyondHR have managed to assist businesses, and hopefully today is all about learning some more tips in order to make that the success, and lots of items that we'll talk about moving forward as well in this particular topic. So welcome this morning. For those that have just joined, we are recording the session, but feel free to put any questions in the chat. We welcome as many questions as possible. So today, what are we looking at? How to maximise remote, flexible and hybrid working, exploring the duties of both employee and employer, and working together to find reasonable solutions. And of course, the juicy part in terms of where it's went wrong, maybe some learning, some compensation elements, and seeing as a business where you need to stay on the track before you end up in potential claims or employment tribunals. So it's great to see everybody today, and thank you for joining. What we've seen this week, a great kind of one-liner we've seen, and it does really recap where we are. Work is no longer the place. Work is what we do. And I think that really sums up today's session nicely. So work is no longer the place. Work is what we do. So just the stats, I love a stat I've got to say, but where are we at the moment? And this was taken from Cybercrew. 5.6 million people worked from home in the UK in 2020. UK employees worked from home on an average of 35.9 hours a week. And as of 2021, 28% of younger workers aged between 16 and 19 worked from home. Quite interestingly, 50% of Londoners would prefer to go back to the office if they were asked to. And almost 20% of UK businesses claimed that they were switching to remote working entirely. A bold move, but we've seen many articles and many businesses moving to this, and many startups and small businesses have adapted in this time throughout the pandemic. In July 2021, 60% of workers in Great Britain who worked from home said that they were asked by their employer to do so. And in 2021, 40% of the respondents in the UK reported substantially improved perceptions of working from home. Certainly from the perspective of some of BeyondHR's clients, they did not think it would ever work, but they had to move with it with the government restrictions. But that's quite an interesting statistic that 40% have improved their perceptions of working from home. 79% of respondents have said that the most beneficial thing related to working from home is there's no commute. So people are finding other things to do with their time, or they're maybe gaining an extra 2 hours in the day, or they're getting up and going to the gym in the morning. They're able to do the school run. They're able just to get up and reset their mindset before they start work, where before they would have been spending time commuting. It's been quite a large item, I think, for remote, flexible and hybrid working. And around 70% of UK professionals have worked remotely since April 2020. And we talk about professionals on the basis of those more likely to be able to work from home. Those, for example, in construction, manufacturing and production lines maybe have not had an opportunity or a choice to be able to work from home as well. 15% of surveyed people in the UK preferred working from home daily. Daily being the key word there, working from home, but working from home daily might be something that's completely different. So good to see some of the statistics just to outline where we are. And they really summed up that working from the company office is still the #1 option for many people in the UK. This doesn't mean though, in terms of on a full-time basis, this might be the hybrid working. But if anything, though, these working from home statistics show that people are willing and able to adapt for their businesses to succeed, which is quite interesting. They might have a preference themselves, but if the business has a certain route or tactic or avenue of remote, flexible and hybrid working, employees are willing to go on this journey. Important to know, not all people are prepared to work from home. Yes, it might take that willpower when you see that large bundle of washing building up, or you can see the state of your home where at work you wouldn't have bothered because it's out of sight, out of mind. Or the tactics and challenges of rearranging their home into personal workspaces. We had clients, for example, that had maybe younger employees that still lived with their parents, that had a very small bedroom and felt claustrophobic that they were living, working, breathing in their bedroom at home, couldn't really go into the living room because their parents were maybe watching the telly, for example. So it did prove particularly challenging where other household members with distractions were lurking about. However, this report does say, obviously, the benefits still outweigh the drawbacks. According to employees, there's financial savings. But aside from that, employees with childcare issues or with children or other members of their family, not just restricted to children, they can actually see them in person rather than glancing over them at a pinned picture on their office desk, which is quite interesting because that was where we were before, I guess. That was the nature. And it is a very mixed bag. Some key people have been very vocal and spoken out in terms of their business and whether it's been beneficial or whether it's not. For example, Matt Elliott, Chief People Officer at Bank of Ireland, his quote, "The pandemic helped us reconnect with society and the role that we play." So roughly by about early 2020, round about 3,500 of the Bank of Ireland employees were working with some degree of flexibility about where they work. But he really wanted to do more. And Matt's thoughts were that the pandemic helped the company reconnect with society and the role that they played, and also allowed the HR function to rethink about its role. HR, in his view, was always about business performance, but HR managed to get a bit more to establish the caring side of HR, line managers, senior managers, and the care about their people and care about supporting people wasn't, in his view, as strong as it ever really should have been. So this was a major focus. They had around 3/4 of their staff working between maybe 25 to 75% of the working week. And they were firmly supporting flexible working as society was reopening. Obviously, there was issues around physical workspacing and differences that you had. And the hybrid new model has 11 working hubs where employees are allowed to book a desk. His view, obviously, the central office still has a really important place to play. And he has redesigned his larger office building at the Bank of Ireland to facilitate meetings, collaboration spaces, but remote locations were for more kind of task-based orientated work where individuals maybe just need to, my expression, get their heads down, thumbs up, and get on with the working day. So for him, it's been a really positive experience. Same Asalic, people partner at Central Survey Health NHS. Employers will want staff back in the office most days. From her point of view, home working has posed challenges, particularly for those managers and those senior leaders that want to keep tabs on their staff. We'll talk about how we look at this and how we can move from this. She does expect that maybe for her, a happy medium would be maybe 1 day a week from home. Maybe at the flip side of what Matt would say, 1 day from home. She thinks that certainly employers will want their staff back in the workplace, and talking in and homing in, and obviously certain industries, certain sectors where there's no real option to work from home. However, very open in terms of she's really thought about flexible working policy strategies and how their business can work differently and more effectively with those people that are working from home 1 day a week. Global Giving. So they have a UK operation. They are a US-based company which connects donors with charities around the world. Global Giving, you think they're a massive organisation. They employ just around under the 20 employee mark. So managers really have a good visibility of how home working did impact them. They were able to keep tabs on everybody. They found that employees with children were really enjoying working from home and had a bit more flexibility, could maybe nip out for that 10 minutes to pick up, etc. But younger staff were finding it more difficult. And really, in the first few months, people were really happy. But over time, the kind of shininess of being able to work from home wore off, the novelty wore off. Younger staff were wanting more connection, more collaboration, and this was far difficult. But really, Global Giving was good in terms of they'd done a survey, they've had a look at some of the feedback. Clear indication from the survey indicated that there was an appetite to return to the office, but people don't want to travel the distance that they did before. The average was kind of looking at that 20-minute mark. So for your business and your people returning to your offices and what you have, what is people's commute? Their benchmark was around the 20 minutes from home. And again, how do we work with employees and how do we meet their needs if we have a static office? And individual needs was really key for them. It was the key driver in working out their trends and the way forward and what to do. And they also had to be careful. Working from home is great, absolutely. But they recognise that it's not always for everybody. It does cause some detriment for some people, for example, that have loneliness or mental health needs. But they really want to have a happy medium, a nice balance, and have some enjoyment of coming back together again in the office. And Mira Dessat, head of HR for NEC Europe, managers need to adapt and learn to set clear objectives remotely. One of the biggest shifts, I guess, we kind of switched to working remotely and then working hybrid overnight. Are managers aware of different employees' home circumstances to be able to work around those, different needs, different communication styles? Are they, for example, realising the people that have their camera off is quite a big indication? We've had a lot of discussions with clients around this. Is it an indication of mental health issues? Is it an indication that things aren't quite right? And how are managers able to spot the signs as well? However, for remote hybrid working, staff engagement was certainly up, work-life balance was up for them as well, and everything has improved. In terms of talent management and recruitment as well, things were swifter, faster, and with no detriment to the calibre of the person. Obviously, organisations, banks would never have considered working from home before. So even 1-2 days a week has a massive benefit for employees as well. But lots of things to think about. And their thinking, Mira Desai's thinking was that people will come to book a desk and come to an office, and they'll come maybe for more of a purpose now, and they'll be much more efficient with their time at home. So very mixed bag in terms of where we are and where some leaders are in their thinking, really. So it's nice just to be able to share that with you today. Where are we? What's happening? January, government, the consultation closed, but the government was consulting on possible changes to flexible working and was asking for views on the following. So making that right to request flexible working a day one right. We're hearing a lot in the media about that at the moment. Obviously, at the moment, it is not, and there's certain eligibility criteria. But will we get to the stage that new starters, people within the first few weeks of being assigned and starting a business, have that day one right? Assessing whether the 8 business reasons for refusal are still valid. Are they still valid? Are they still up to date? Are they still reasonable? When we are having discussions with clients about rejecting flexible working, it's where we have to go to, it's where we have to point them in direction and guide them on in terms of those 8 reasons for refusal. Requiring employers to suggest alternative options when refusing a request with a view to making it more accessible and encouraging employers to look more closely at alternatives. So the positive spin, the encouragement, the supporting, making it accessible and encouraging employers to look at other ways and means of doing things. And assessing the admin process for these requests, whether employees should be allowed to make more than one a year, which is the stance at the moment, and whether changes should be made to the current 3-month response time that the employers have to process requests, which includes any appeal process as well. That's a kind of time frame, the 3 months. And assessing requests for temporary flexible working arrangements and informal requests. For our flexible, it's very static at the moment. There's not much flexibility around. If it's a permanent change, it's a permanent change. So is there some avenues for temporary means and informal requests? So quite interesting. CIPD, government, everyone's kind of jumping on this, that should be a day one right. Lots of different views out on this as well. So I guess we see where it goes. As we said as well, just post any questions in the chat that you may have at the moment. Hopefully we'll get to some of those questions at the end, if not all of them, the majority of them. So anything that comes into your head that's a burning question, please just post it in the Q&A. And for anybody that's joined a wee bit later, you will receive the slides if you just contact us through our website, and I'll show you that, or our email address, and I'll post that all at the end for you. But we'll have a chance for a bit more interaction at the end of the session. So that's all the stats. That's kind of what people are thinking. But how do we work together to make this work? We've had lots of calls. Natalie, we want to make this work. What do we do? What are other people doing? Other people are looking at 4-day working weeks with maybe not all the same day off for individuals, so there's still cover for customers and for some clients. Would this work? Would this not work? Some people might not want to work 4 days either. Some people would prefer. Is this compressed hours over the 4-day working week, or is this a reduction? And then that gets across in terms of, does that have any impact for holidays, for salaries, for any other benefits as well? So all good on the 4-day working week. Lots of items in the media, lots of companies, and indeed some of our clients trialing this to see how the 4-day working week pans out, really. Will it go far? Will it do well? But maybe caution in terms of having that trial. Salesforce have recently come out, really, really good initiative in terms of coffee shops and local businesses. So what they're doing is they're saying, listen, guys, we're adapting that strapline. Work is not the place, it's what you do. We really want to support local shops, local coffee shops, local businesses that have suffered during the pandemic. And we want to reach out to those. We want you to work there. We want you to get a table. We want you to buy a coffee. We want you to buy your lunch there. We actually don't care where you work. Not for everything, but for certain elements of the day, or for certain days that they can work remotely or work hybridly. Let's really support our coffee shops and local businesses as well. So really, I just thought that was quite good. And obviously they have been not great in terms of being able to support businesses that have been closed a lot of the times as well. So great. See some questions coming in so far. Was doing a bit of multitasking there. So great. Keep them coming in. Any comments, any questions that you have. Work from anywhere. We're having lots of queries on this. The media's talking about let's go and work from Barbados. Let's go and work from Madrid. And yes, it's easy. Probably the easiest thing is to pick up the laptop and get your connectivity and work in your space, whatever that may be. But please seek advice is all that I would say. It depends what period of time you're going for. There may be tax implications. There may be other implications for the individual and for the organisation. I guess the media doesn't help this because they think it's just the click of a switch and you just take your laptop and you fly and you go to Madrid. But there are probably another 12 areas to consider and possibly some implications as well. But yeah, if you were maybe where it has worked is where employees are going on holiday and then they maybe extend their holiday by another 1 or 2 weeks. So a very short time frame where they can work from anywhere for that time. But work from anywhere just doesn't cover obviously working abroad. It can be if they wanted to work from their parents' house to make the travel at the end of the day better if they're doing pickups, etc. So it's thinking about these items. These are the items that employees might come to you with because they're seeing them in the media. Sorry, can't get my words out there. And they are listening to what other businesses are doing. And yeah, maybe large corporates are able to do more, maybe indeed less than some other SMEs. So it's thinking about just being aware of everything that's happening out there and what we can do. The hybrid model is great. And we'll talk and we'll sum up, but what about where we let employees pick? Yeah, why do we need to, in order to work together, there might be absolute critical business needs and reasons why, or you might determine everyone has to be in the office for 2 days a week. But there are some organisations that saying out there, listen guys, hybrid working, you tell me. Work is no longer the place, it's what you do, as we keep saying. So productivity has increased. Maybe not for all businesses, but it definitely has increased. So I guess business owners and senior leaders are thinking, where do we get the most out of people? I don't really care. We do need them for a team meeting though. We do need them for some collaboration and to get some ideas and get them really involved in the team. So it's thinking about that as well. The clubhouse approach, many organisations are using this. So your clubhouse may be your traditional office, but it's adapting your office, but it's the space that people go to collaborate, to share ideas. And other than that, they work wherever they like, whether that be the coffee shop, the local business, a hot desking opportunity to speak to other fellow peers or employees or whatever that may be. But now, instead of it known as the office, it's maybe known as the clubhouse. So very different. If we think of a clubhouse, we maybe think of a social club or a golf course. There are many forward-thinking businesses that are assigning their central office as their clubhouse. And also just to take note of the survey that we talked about there about the 20-minute commute, a lot of people are setting up their satellite offices. So maybe if they're based in, say, Glasgow, Manchester, London, Northern Ireland, etc. They might have Belfast, they might have just an office in each of these locations, or throughout the country, several offices or hot desking opportunities that people can jump into that's maybe within a given area as well. So it's thinking outside the box, it's making things work. Obviously, there are issues with home working or hybrid working, but we'll talk about some tips to have in place as well. So I'll just move on. And thanks for the question so far. So in order to make it work, if you're thinking, this is quite daunting, all of this, plan meetings in advance so that people know what the mix is. I'm in the office that day, they can sort out their life around it, they can sort what they need to wear the night before, are they using loungers in the morning, or are they putting their work trousers on? So planning those meetings in advance so that people can really determine their week and decide where's best to work, or tasks that have to be office-based. Measuring productivity, lots of tools out there to look at. Although you can't physically see individuals, we must trust them. We must trust that they'll do the job. But how are you measuring productivity to be able to say, maybe if you've got a trial period in of home working forever and on a permanent basis for the full time, how do we measure that productivity is doing good? Or if we're pulling that back, we have some stats to show whether it was a success or a failure. Increase team effectiveness. So we can't just leave people at home, and they won't be happy just left at home. So what methods of communication, what do people need? Do we have some Teams comms? Do we have some group chats? Do we have some WhatsApps? Do we have some social activities, some team meetings? What is the mix of all of that? Now, moving forward, everyone's thinking about those hybrid meetings. So in the future, your board meeting, your team meeting, your any kind of customer meeting, you might have at least one person in the room that's not physically in the room, that's at home. So how are you adapting your meetings? This has probably been quite a big learning for most organisations recently. Sorry, I can't come into the office today, I've got some issues, but I'll zoom in. Okay, so how do we adapt that meeting? Where do people look in the room? How do we engage and encourage those people still sitting at home that they are actively involved in part of the business as well? And the biggest learning as well is understanding what's important to your team. Are you setting the things? Are you doing a survey? Are you speaking to them? Are you looking at the mix of what people need and what's going to make them happy? Attraction is a major issue at the moment. So we're looking more beyond the salary now, and we're looking at benefits, we're looking at flexibility, we're looking at meeting people's needs, giving them a work-life balance. If someone, for example, can work from home 3 days a week, it means they can jump to the gym or jump on a run for their lunch, come back to their desk, where they might not have the luxury of doing that in the office. That could be a big thing to people, and that could be a deal breaker if you're restricted to Monday to Friday office working as well. So it's thinking about what's important to your team. Everyone will have different needs, and there will be individuals that need that office Monday to Friday 9 to 5 as well. So it's clearly the balance, but understanding what's important to your team with obviously the business needs as well. When it's went wrong, and it does go wrong. So I've got some case law to talk through, some compensation to see where it goes wrong. I would advise, if you do have any of these particular incidents or cases or similarities, please call for some started advice to see what we need to do to guide you in the right direction. Tribunals obviously are all of the outcomes are online now, so it's readily available, and social media has not helped with claims and outcomes. They're very readily available in the media now. So the first case that we are going to talk about is about that refusal to attend the workplace, so the place of work being the office, here, Quelch versus Courtiers Support Services Limited 2021. It's one based on the pandemic, and the good thing is about the pandemic, employment legislation moved pretty fast in terms of tribunal cases. The outcome was out pretty fast in consideration to previous cases that were still maybe waiting on hearing outcomes or take months, years. They have come out fairly quickly, which is good to set the pace for business owners to see what the stance is and how a tribunal's thinking would be on that day. So the compensation awarded was 14,746 in this case. So we had, for Quelch, he was a compliance analyst, and Courtiers Services is a financial services business, and the employee was dismissed for gross misconduct for failure to return to work. So Quelch had successfully worked from home during way back to the first lockdown, but he was asked to return in July 2020, even though government guidance at this time was strictly still work from home if people could. he had anxiety and refused to return, and had some concerns about his clinically vulnerable partner at home who had asthma and a heart condition. The employee had said that they were concerned about COVID safety measures in the workplace. Things hadn't been properly implemented, and his line manager did support his request just to continue to work from home. However, the chief exec insisted that he returned back to the office. Numerous emails were sent back and forth. He still hadn't returned despite the instruction to return. So his access to work systems were withdrawn, cut off completely, and he was placed on unpaid leave, even though he remained willing to work from home. He just wasn't willing to work in the office. After disciplinary proceedings, and we'll talk about those in a moment, he was dismissed for failing to follow that reasonable instruction, which was to return to work, and failure to comply with the terms of his contract regarding the place of work. Now, a point of note as well, go back, have your contracts been updated in terms of that place of work at the moment? Is that all now what it needs to be, or is it 3 years ago when things were slightly different? So have a look at your contract, your employee handbook, any other documentation that maybe talks about place of work, home working policy. Does your IT policy now need updated as well? Lots and lots, or do you need to give us a wee call to see what actually needs to be updated as well? So lo and behold, the tribunal here found that there was no potential fair reason for dismissal, and the procedures followed. It was outside the range of reasonable responses. So the employee Quelch's claims were for ordinary unfair dismissal, automatic unfair dismissal based on the return and the serious and imminent danger. And this is probably a bit of a trend at the moment for anybody, because there's no length of service required for this type of claim. And if they don't have the required 1 or 2 year length of service, this is maybe where some people are going down, and we have definitely seen this. So his claims all succeeded, and in terms of the disciplinary proceeding, an uplift of 20% on the CAS codes of practice. They didn't follow it. There were some failings, for example, another topic for another day, but the HR person that was looking at the disciplinary process had written the COVID risk assessment and had challenged some grievances, etc. So therefore hadn't been impartial. So a good one to see, and a great one to show in terms of the compensation, because it's not always freely available in terms of the compensation awarded. So just over 14,500 for that one. Our next one that we want to discuss is rejecting those flexible working requests. So Stone versus Cineworld Cinemas. Very well-known business that we'll all relate to. So this cinema employee, Stone, worked a variety of shifts, mainly between kind of 8:30 to 4 o'clock over a 7-day working period on a rota. She made 2 requests for flexible working, and she had some childcare issues. Both requests were rejected. But after her second flexible working request was rejected, she brought a claim for indirect sex discrimination. She won her claim. She had a legitimate, the employer did have a legitimate aim, which was requiring staff to work the shifts over flexibility for the smooth running. Absolutely, it's cinema. But the employer wasn't justified in some of the flexibility. So the employee talked about the proposal to work part-time, to work in a job share. The job share actually would cause kind of minimal adverse effect on the business as well. And the severe impact of rejecting that would mean that the employee would lose her job. So the tribunal had to balance both of these up. And just a point of note in terms of job share requests are probably one of the hardest types of flexible working requests for employers to refuse. If 2 employees will share the job between them, then the job is still getting done, unless there's other items that have to be taken in. But all of these need to be really written down, carefully thought through and documented in terms of that claim. Yes, there might be further training, etc. required, but if it can be done in a short space of time with low costs, then a tribunal would look at this. Now, For the rejection of flexible working, you're looking at around 2 months compensation if the employee stays in employment, or you may have constructive unfair dismissal claims if the employee has to leave because of that rejection of the flexible working request. Our next one is Webster versus Princess Soft Drinks. Again, well known in terms of where we are. And the company that we know, and again another flexible working sex discrimination claim, the employee winner case, and the tribunal, the case does show the emphasis that tribunals place on the full consideration of the flexible working request as well. Webster was a senior financial accountant who applied to job share again for the post, and it was rejected on the basis, part of the justification for the refusal from the business was that there was a risk that the different management styles of the job sharers would interfere with employees reporting directly to them. That was their justification as to why the job share wouldn't work. The tribunal did not agree with this. It did not feel that this could justify the refusal of the job share, and it was unfortunately indirectly discriminatory. They maybe should have considered about maybe delegating routine tasks to other members of staff, etc. And there were other failures. But really from this case, what this case said was starting from the positive perspective. So not just only in maybe flexible working requests, flexible can cover a variety from compressed hours to working from home to hybrids to absolutely anything at the moment. So it should start from a positive perspective. How do we try and make this work? We know in reality, it's as soon as kind of business owners get flexible requests in, they start, a bit nervous, a bit negative, but how do we make this work? And if it can't work, that's okay, but trying to start at that positive perspective. How can we overcome these difficulties? Let's meet with the employee, let's see what they have to say, let's not have that knee-jerk reaction that it won't work, let's maybe have a trial period, etc. So all of these items that we need to look at, and maintaining records was another outcome of this. It should be recorded. Are you using application forms? Are you being consistent? Are you looking at previous decisions and how those have been consistent? Are you having everything written down in terms of your thought process or any trial periods and what's not went right during the trial period and has it been communicated? We could go on in terms of maintaining those records. So another really good case to think about. And on the balance, we do have to obviously throw in one where the employer did win their case. Again, caution, these cases, love talking about case law, but it's very specific to your business, the individual, the facts of the case. So even if you do read a case and can relate to that, it might not be 100% what you're looking at. So absolutely, please get some advice. So this case is to do Acutus versus Fortuna Group. Don't ask me to say that again, please. And I'll talk to you about what that company done at the end. It's quite interesting. You might see why it kind of swung this way. But this case was to do with leaving the workplace due to danger. So it was a sales and marketing employee, and it was found not to be automatically unfair due to a dispute with the employer about furlough, working from home, and workplace danger. Again, another common theme. So this one was about after the first lockdown in March 2020, the employer stayed open, but said that employees wanting to avoid the workplace could take paid or unpaid leave. Now, it's important to note that this employee had issues in the past, had a background of ongoing disputes about his hours, about pay, about the working environment and conduct in the office, all way prior to COVID times. His request to work from home was refused. There was lots of costs involved in arranging remote access to the software, and there was a need for physical presence for him to be there for deliveries. He travelled by bus to work, and he had COVID symptoms as well, had to isolate at times, but afterwards he requested furlough. It was refused. There was work for him to do. And once I tell you what the company did, you'll understand why there was work to do during the pandemic as well. He felt uncomfortable attending the office during lockdown. He continued to say after obviously his isolation that he still had COVID symptoms, and he continued to get those isolation notes that were in place at the time. The employer dismissed him via email after other processes. Obviously, I would not encourage dismissing via email, and cited the failure to comply with the company policy as well. Lots of different things here in relation to his length of service, but again, that's another topic for another day. But he left. He said that he left the workplace due to a reasonable belief in a serious and imminent danger. So again, no length of service requirement. The employer did, however, successfully defend the claim. Yes, the pandemic presented serious and imminent danger. However, they had their risk assessment. They reviewed this. They were shielding him from danger. They let him stay at home on paid or unpaid leave, but the employee wanted to protect his financial position. So this really came out of the case. Actually, it was more about the bus fare than about his health and safety. Can't even think of the word right now, his health and safety problems, or his concerns that he had about health and safety. So it was more about this, and they dismiss him under the 2-year service. So employees will struggle to prove claims of workplace danger if it's more about requesting furlough, or it's not health and safety, but it's more about financial motives. Obviously, during furlough, we were looking at where there was work available, and this employer sold PPE, including face masks, gloves to the NHS. So obviously they had to try and encourage as many people to get into the office, and they had everything in place. That maybe is the difference where other people have failed, where there has been serious or imminent danger. So that's just a quick whistle-stop tour of 3 cases where the employee has won and 1 case where the employer has won. But as I said, give us a wee call. Let's chat through some items that you have. But as a sum up, we've looked at the statistics, we've looked at some tips, we've looked at what other people are doing and some tips along the way, what employers need to think about, what employees need to think about. And just to sum up in terms of what you should be doing, speaking to individuals, if there's an option, we understand and appreciate every business is different. There may not be any opportunity to, all this might be a fairy tale for some businesses, but if there is an option, maybe don't have a blanket policy, or before you get to that blanket policy, see how you satisfy the majority of your employees. Everyone is different. We can't say that home working will be for everyone. We can't say that office-based is for everyone. Everyone has their own issues. Seek advice every step of the way, indeed, for both flexible working requests, to make sure, are you within the timescales? Are you looking at the legal reasons for declining? How strong is your case in terms of declining, etc.? Have you followed maintaining records? All of the stuff that we've talked about so far, we could probably do that on a webinar on its own as well. So be mindful of those legalities and timescales, and be mindful of any claims, especially discrimination where it could be uncapped. So indirect, direct sex discrimination, etc. If it's about childcare issues, or if it's about, for example, being a carer to a disabled parent, etc. All of these are uncapped, so there is no upper level in terms of compensation and what that looks for. So I am pretty spot on in terms of time. That is 11:45. It's been great chatting to you about what's happening out there. Hopefully you've taken something away, or even just given you food for thought about what the business will look like over the next few months or years, or how you keep up with the trends and what's happening. If you do have any questions, or you do need some starter advice, please, inquiries at wegobeyondhr.com, or jump onto our website, www.wegobeyondhr.com. Have a wee look there. Our phone numbers are here as well, and I would be happy to take any questions that we have here. So I'll just give a couple of minutes to post in the chat. That would be great. I can see the questions that have come in so far, and I'll just start to address those. And if you have any requirement for the slides, etc., please just drop us a wee email as well, and we'll be happy to send all of the slides on today. Okay, so I'll just start going through some of the questions. Yeah, absolutely good points in terms of data privacy. Obviously, a lot of businesses have had to update their GDPR policy, for example, as well during this period of time. Another note, has that been done? You might have a wee list of things that you're thinking that you need to do from some of the pointers that I've talked about. So a senior financial services role, the mix of hybrid working is tricky now that people are in and out of the office on different days. Where before, yeah, you're right, everyone was either at home or the office, which was easier. And what's the best way of structuring team meetings, collaborative working? Absolutely great question. Might not have all of the answers, but we're looking at obviously getting those times that people, regardless, we talked about the hybrid model, so a team meeting can still happen regardless. It shouldn't be about where the person is. Remember, work is what we do, work is not the place. So if we can think about grab that moment where people are available, whether that's at home or in the office, yeah, it's a bit more trickier. Or there might be occasions where we're having to have everybody in the office for that team meeting because it's more collaborative to do so. I think people have had problems with creativity and ideas. Where in an office you can bounce ideas off of each other, so you're having to think about the way that this is working. For example, Cisco are doing that, what we talked about there in terms of being able to sit over a desk and speak to people. Cisco are trying to work on a virtual platform of that, where it's almost like a virtual, I mean, how many good chats have you had over a coffee, just standing at the coffee machine waiting? Great chats. They're trying to introduce some kind of virtual method of that, where you're feeling maybe you get 10 minutes in between a meeting, you've got a really good idea you want to buy, you can just jump into a session and everyone can have a chat. It's online, you can sit with your coffee, but it's thinking of the way, you're right, it's far trickier for the question that was posed there. So that was great. Lost items in coffee shops, absolutely. If you're dealing with data, how are you keeping this secure? What are you taking? Most people are moving obviously to the cloud, where paper work needs to be a thing of the past for things like that. You don't want to go into Costa Coffee and someone's previous list of their clients is maybe sitting there. So it's thinking about all of that security and training staff and making sure that they're not leaving lost items in coffee shops as well. So great for the question. Another question in terms of, problems and understanding of, just read this here, sorry, problems and understanding of getting people back to work that have maybe, save travel costs, that have childcare. It's working with them as well. What works for the business, what works for the individual, and trying to meet their needs, but also meet your business needs as well. So having maybe a bit of a mix, but people have adapted, and work-life balance is really important now. So what does that look like as well? Great. Any other questions? We've had data privacy, we've had getting people back into the office where they've got used to a new life, flexibility, structuring team meetings, collaborative working. Absolutely. If there's any other questions, feel free to post here, or indeed understand obviously the session has been recorded, so you may not want to pose your questions. So if you want to get in touch with us, our details are all on the screen. We've assisted businesses getting employees back into the workplace. There's maybe been some issues in order to do so, and maybe phasing that out as well would be a good tip. So rather than just saying, right, everybody's back in 5 days next week, maybe phasing that out. But I think if that's all of the questions and there's no more, thanks for jumping on today, and thanks for engaging in the topic. If there's any other comments or questions, or you need the slides, then please give us a shout. But thanks for jumping on, and hopefully that's given you a good insight in terms of where people are moving as well. So thank you very much, and have a great day. Take care. Bye bye now.